Today we begin Chapter 12. Chapter 12 is entitled Payroll Accounting, and the first section in the chapter is on calculating gross earnings. First off, let's define payroll. Payroll is a list of the employees and the payments that are due to them for their work over a specific period of time. This could be done weekly, it could be done every other week. There are other pay periods that we'll talk about, but the common ones are weekly and bi-weekly. Payroll is a major expense for most companies. In fact, it's often one of the largest, if not the largest, expense for most companies. When we design a payroll system, there are two goals that we have in mind from the perspective of the accountant. One of our goals is that we are excellently achieving the collection and processing of all the information that's needed to prepare and issue the payroll checks. In other words, we can collect and process all the information that we need in order to pay the employees. And secondly, our well-designed payroll system generates the payroll records that are needed for accounting purposes and for reporting to government agencies. We need record keeping of what each employee was paid and how much was withheld for this tax and that tax and maybe medical insurance, and perhaps it's a union shop, so there's union dues involved. All of these things need to be recorded because eventually, because of all the amounts that have been withheld from employees that we are withholding on their behalf, all of that money needs to get paid at different times to different places. So we need an organization to make that happen. The person responsible for doing this is the payroll clerk. It is the responsibility of the payroll clerk to make sure that the employees are paid on time, that they are paid the correct amount. The payroll clerk will also complete all of the payroll records, submit the reports to the various places that they would need to go inside of the company and to whatever government authorities are interested. And also the payroll clerk pays the payroll taxes. And all of these things need to be done at the correct amounts, at the correct time, because there are two things that stink really bad. One of them is when you are told, oh, your payroll check isn't going to make it on time. We're a little behind and you're going to have to wait a day. And the other thing that really stinks is you get your paycheck, and even if it's on time, you discover you haven't been paid the right amount. So the payroll clerk is the person who unfortunately gets beat on a little bit anytime one of those mistakes gets made. There are a couple of practical questions that we need to ask before we can go much further. One is, how often do you get paid? I hinted at that a couple of minutes ago with the length of pay periods. And the second question is, how is your pay calculated? That one we'll come back to in a moment. But first off, the pay period is the amount of time over which an employee is paid. This can be weekly, meaning perhaps you get paid every Friday for the work that you did for the previous week. Bi-weekly means you get paid every other week. So you might get a check this Friday, and then not next Friday, but then the following Friday you would get paid again for those 2 weeks. Semi-monthly and monthly are a little less common, but they are sometimes get used. Semi-monthly means you are being paid twice per month, the 1st and the 15th perhaps, although those dates could be different depending on the business. You could also be paid monthly. So now that we've settled the issue of how often you're getting paid, let's look into how you get paid. The total amount of money that the employee earns for the pay period is called his or her gross earnings. Sometimes you'll hear this referred to as gross pay, and from the perspective of the employer, and particularly for the accountant, this will be referred to as salary expense. So gross earnings are the total of what you have earned, even if some of that money ends up not getting to you because of the withholdings that we'll talk about in the next section. There are four major ways in which somebody can be paid. You can be paid on a salary basis. You can be paid a wage. There's also being paid on commission, and there's also what's called paid on a piece rate basis. And sometimes we can combine them, but in the basic way, they're going to be treated for the moment as standalone ideas. First off, a salary, when you're paid on salary, that means that you get a fixed amount of money each pay period, regardless of how many hours you worked. So if you come in and you work 40 hours this week, you'll get paid the same as if you had to really work really, really hard and stay late a few nights, and the following week you worked 50 hours. You're still getting the same pay for the 40-hour week as you would for the 50-hour week. You're earning the same amount regardless of the number of hours that you work. For example, your teachers are salaried. We're paid the same every 2 weeks. Actually, we're bi-weekly. We're paid the same regardless of whether school is in session or not. Our pay is counted for, get you from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, and is spread out into 26 equal amounts. An hourly wage, or wage in general, means you're being paid per period of time that you work. This is typically an hourly wage. It doesn't have to be. Sometimes you are paid per day that you work. That if you work Monday, you get paid for Monday. If you work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you get paid Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And it's not an hourly basis. It's, hey, you work this day, this day, this day, but not that other day. But usually a wage is an hourly thing. You work 7 hours on Monday, you get paid for 7 hours. Starting at an hourly rate. We'll take the hourly rate and multiply by how many hours you worked. So 7 hours on Monday, and another 6 on Tuesday, and 8 on Wednesday. You're at 21 hours total. At whatever your hourly wage is, we multiply and we get your gross pay. And let's do an example of that. Suppose that Emily is paid $6.75 per hour, and she works 36 hours during the pay period. How much is her gross pay for that pay period? If you said $243, you're correct. We'll take the 36 hours that she worked, multiply by $6.75 per hour. She's making $6.75 for each and every hour that she works, for a total of $243. So how does a business track the hours that you work? Well, they may be noting it. They may be expecting that you arrive and depart at scheduled times. If there is somebody there to observe that, for sure. Typically, though, you are responsible for reporting your own hours. You might be on the honor system. You might have to physically punch a time card into a time clock to create a paper record of when you arrive or depart. You may, and this is especially true nowadays, you may have to swipe your badge, or log in through a computer terminal that will record you coming and going. And that way all of the records are computerized. There's nothing that would need to be transferred over from a written or mechanically produced time card to put it into a computer system in order to calculate hours. So what happens if, oh gee whiz, I'm scheduled to leave work at 2, but I leave at 2:03. I was a couple of minutes late out the door. I'm working in this retail job, and, I'm trying to help the customer, and I realize that my time's coming up, and I had to hang out for a couple extra minutes to finish the job. Well, these things, they happen. In a computerized system, you would be paid for 2:03. In a paper-based system, it is very likely that the business may round your time whether you are punching in or punching out, to the nearest quarter of an hour or to the nearest tenth of an hour. For example, in a quarter hour system, 2:03 would count as 2 o'clock, in the same way that 1:58 would count as 2 o'clock. And maybe we'll round 2:11 up to 2:15, so that everything is based on no fractional part of an hour, or a quarter, or a half, or 3/4 of an hour, as opposed to 3/60ths of an hour, or even more awkward, 11/60ths of an hour. Doing payroll by hand, you would want the numbers to be a little easier to work with. So we go back to Emily again, and here are Emily's hours for Monday. She came to work, she punched in at 7:58, went to lunch at 12:25, returned at 1:32 for the rest of her shift, which ended at 4:18. Round those hours to the nearest quarter hour, and the 8 o'clock hour, 7:58, I should say, would round to 8 a.m. The 12:25, the closest half hour to that is 12:30. So in her morning, she worked from 8 a.m. to 12:30 for the purpose of payroll. She came back at 1:32, and a little later than she should have, but we'll just say it's 1:30 and not sweat the details on that. Maybe she gets a firm talking to about coming back on time, and certainly not leaving early, because she did leave for lunch at 12:25 instead of the presumed 12:30. 4:18, the closest quarter hour is 4:15, and we would say that she has worked the afternoon part of her workday from 1:30 to 4:15. Hey, look at that, there are those hours again. 8 to 12:30 and 1:30 to 4:15, and from that we would figure out how many hours she worked, and you know what, we're going to do that. Because here is Emily's time card for the whole week, and we can go through the whole week, but Monday is really what we are interested in. That 7:58 to 12:25 part, that amounted to 4.5 hours of work in the morning. The 1:32 to 4:18, or 1:32 to 4:18, I should say, is going to approximate as 1:30 to 4:15, and that's another 2 3/4 hours. So for the day, the 4.5 hours that she worked in the morning plus the 2 3/4 that she worked in the afternoon amounts to a total of 7 1/4 hours that she worked in total on Monday. We can tack on what she did Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday to find that she worked a total of 36 hours for the week. Commission is the amount that's paid to the employee based on a percentage of their sales. So we'll take the sales that they have, and this is usually a sales type job. You're selling something in a retail or retail-ish setting. For example, car salesmen are often on a commission basis. That a major part of their pay is a percentage of the dollar amount that they bring in terms of selling you automobiles for your driving convenience. Take the percentage of sales that you get as your commission, your cut of the sale, multiplied by how much that you made. So we have Joyce. Joyce is paid 5% on commission on all of her sales, and her sales last week amounted to $8,254. What was her gross pay? That's right, we'll take the $8,254 and multiply it by 0.05 for a gross pay of $412.70. Now, it would really stink if you were working strictly on commission, and there are a lot of people in this world who do, and they run the risk of, it's been a slow week or a slow month, and I'm not making a whole lot of money. So there are situations, employers where a salesperson gets a base salary regardless of the quantity of their sales, and then is given a commission, is granted a commission, a percentage of the sales on top of that. For example, we have Juan. Juan gets $200 a week. That's regardless of whether he does anything else. Now, granted, Juan is going to be tracked very heavily to make sure that he is actually selling things, because $200 doesn't go very far. Juan also receives 3% of the dollar amount of the sales that he makes. So in a week where his sales have totaled $4,810, what we'll do is figure out his commission. The $4,810 worth of sales will be multiplied by 3%. Remember, we turned 3% into a decimal by moving the decimal point 2 places to the left. The $4,810 in sales amounted to a commission of $144.30. But wait, he's also getting $200 in salary. So his total pay for the week is the sum of those two. His gross pay is $344.30. Take the $200 salary plus the $144.30 in commission for a total of $344.30. The fourth and final way in which we can talk about employees being paid is what's called piece rate. This is where you are paid a specific amount per item that you produce. Let's say that you are working for Pierce Enterprises and you are assembling widgets, and I'll pay you $1 for every widget you produce, every widget that you assemble. Well, if that widget takes a minute to put together, I'm paying you $60 in an hour. If that widget takes you a half hour to put together, I'm only paying you $2 for that hour. Man, that really stinks. So again, this is something that can be combined with a relatively low wage or a low salary in order to offset the dollar amount for the piece rate. One more topic to cover in this video, and that is the idea of overtime. Overtime does not typically apply to salaried employees, although there are certain circumstances in which an employer may offer overtime to a salaried employee. Generally, this is something that is for hourly wage employees. Federal and state laws regulate how many hours a wage employee is allowed to work in a week. And one of the regulations that's part of that is once you get past 40 hours in a work week, your pay increases by 50% for the remainder of the week. So once you've hit 40 hours, your, let's say, $10 hourly wage, the rest of the week, all the hours you work in excess of 40, your pay is 1.5 times the hourly rate. So your pay would go to $15 for those subsequent hours. John's hourly wage is $6.60. Yeah, I know, it's pretty low. It's lower than minimum wage now, but that's the example that I have here. And let's say that John worked 43 hours last week. Let's find John's gross pay for the week. I would suggest splitting this into regular hours, which max out at 40, and the overtime hours, which is the number of hours that he's worked over and above the 40 hours. It would be nice to figure out what his overtime wage rate is. Take his regular wage and multiply by $6.60. And we can answer the question of what John's gross pay is for the week. John's gross pay ends up being $293.70. He's worked 40 hours at $6.60. He can't go past 40 hours at this rate, because once he does, he's going to get paid the overtime rate of $9.90. 40 hours at $6.60 an hour is $264. But he didn't stop at 40. He worked 3 more hours, and those 3 hours come at an hourly rate of $9.90. And this is, by the way, $6.60 multiplied by 1.5. So that's where the $9.90 is coming from. We've taken his hourly rate and multiplied it by 1.5. So he's made $29.70 in those 3 overtime hours, put them together for a total of $293.70. In our next episode, we'll look at all of the things that will cause their pay to go down, all of the various payroll deductions, taxes, union dues, medical insurance, things like that. That's all coming next time. See you then.